Hello and welcome to another episode of the D Shift from Potapalooza. And I am really excited to have Elisa Boogaerts here. She is a inspirational speaker, a published author, and a certified life coach. And Elisa helps professionals prioritize themselves to reclaim their time, energy, and freedom so they can do what they want to do in their life. And that sounds like a pretty darn good goal is help people do that. So welcome, Elisa. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm like so excited to be here, especially because I know that with everything that you're doing, and I feel like what I do is like help people like, on that transition out, like, okay, now that you're in this new space, after divorce and you're like, what do you want to do now? And how can you prioritize yourself and like set up your life the way that you want it to, and really doing that internal work of like, what do I want now? Who am I now? How do I want my life to go and how can I build it in that way?
Yeah, and all the possibilities that are out there. And sometimes for a lot of women, that's hard to think about because they've been so busy caring for everybody else that it's hard to all of a sudden think about this. So first of
Yeah.
all, before we get into that, which I could have just gone right off there, but I'd like to find out a little bit about what brought you into this space. Like this is your area of expertise. What got you here?
Um, yeah, I think like actually just as we were talking about that, it really was reminding me of when I kind of when I hit my rock bottom, and it wasn't through divorce, but it was through a breakup. And I had broken up with my boyfriend. We recently moved to London, England, and when I showed up, we had been backpacking, so I was heartbroken. It was a very controlling relationship, so I didn't know who I was anymore. I was broke because I'd just been backpacking on a shoestring for 7 months. I didn't really know anybody locally. I like knew two acquaintances. I was homeless. I didn't have a home yet, and I didn't have a job yet. So to me,
Wow.
like that was my ground zero, my rock bottom. And I really just felt like this puddle of mush as well, especially from the relationship where I wasn't allowed to think for myself for years and years and I hadn't been asked what I wanted. And and I was able to rebuild my life from the ground up. And it was kind of an amazing thing because I was there on my own. I had that sort of space to really do the internal work and figure out what I wanted for myself and how to rebuild my life and what healthy conscious relationships I wanted and what kind of job I wanted and yeah, really rebuilt my life from the ground up. And I really learned then like how to prioritize myself and like what did I really want and putting myself first and how to set boundaries. And I know like in doing that, I definitely rubbed some people the wrong way because I don't think I knew how, right? I didn't really have all the tools, but over the year, I really created this huge toolkit of how to do that and like, how to confidently say no and how to put yourself first without feeling guilty and know that like it's okay for you to do you and to really understand, who I was and what my values were and like dare to be me and just like own it really, which is what, yeah.
Yeah.
And now I like, my life is just so different. And I really like I know it was like I've struggled before with putting everybody else's needs before my own, and living the life that I was told to live. And I know like I spent years of my life ticking all the right boxes and being a good girl and doing all the things, and I've let people walk all over me, and I've just developed these ways to not let that happen anymore. And now I feel my life with what I want, and I don't waste my time on what I don't want.
And that is such a healthy outlook and such a healthy goal because I do believe I'm not one of this big conspiracy theory that like men as a group are out to subjugate and push women down. But there's a lot of jackasses out there that's what they do. I mean, there's women who do it too, so it's not just all men. But
No.
do you feel that there's this thing in society, and you're a lot younger than me, but do you still think that there's this thing in society where it's not really right for a woman to stand up and to put herself first and to speak, to set boundaries, especially when we're in a relationship that we're supposed to be the caregivers, the homemakers, the food preparers, the laundry doers? Like, do you think that's still a thing, or is that a generational thing that's kind of fading out, or what are your thoughts on that?
I think it still exists because I have friends who still play in those roles. I think there is a bit of a shift where there's a little bit of equanimity, especially now because like both women and or both people in any relationship are usually working, I would say. So there's a little bit of like, because I think maybe before, if one person wasn't working, it's like, okay, well, all these things, home is your job, kids are your job, or whatever, whether it's that, regardless of which partner it is. So I think it's starting to shift a little bit, but I still think there is a lot of that. I think that if you think of all like the history and all like, ancestral knowledge and all of that baggage that still ties us down, I
Yeah.
think it's still a thing. And I think that and I find it to be a bit of a battle because growing up, it's like, or even now as a woman, I'm like, no, I'm independent and I don't want those things, but I still get that pressure even from, like my mother or whatever is like, oh no, but this is what you should do. Or like, what are you doing? Or like just about a year and a half ago, I had another breakup with a boyfriend and my mom immediately was like, well, are you okay with money? Well, now that you're on your own, are you okay? And she wanted to give me money. And I was like, Mom, I'm better off for money now than I'm not with him, who's like was taking it and like I had to pay for things, like, and I because I'm fully financially independent, but that was just her immediate response.
Right.
And so I find that sometimes there's a bit of that battle of like trying to change those beliefs and leave them in the half and rewire our brains, but then we still get this pressure from society and from just like history that still tries to hold us there. So it's this very interesting place that we're in the world
And
right now.
I think the thing is so many women don't even think about it. Like, not that they are not aware of it. It's just they don't question the status quo. And I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with being in a great relationship and taking on the responsibility of doing the cooking and caring for the house and having a job. And I mean, if you want to do that, that is great. More power to you, because those are very important jobs. It's not like they're the second class job in the family. They're the first class job in the family.
Yeah.
But I think sometimes women just get overwhelmed and it's really hard for them to set those boundaries. Like, and I'm hearing that that's one of the things that you work with your clients on, is learning how to do that kind of thing.
Yes, absolutely. I was actually just the other week with a client and we were talking about setting those boundaries and about how there's like, I like to call them boundary busters, like four sort of ways that our boundaries get busted. And they're people pleasing, peer pressure, avoidance, and one of them was giving in. And she really resonated with the giving in thing. And we were talking and I was and I said to her, it's not too late to change. It's not too late to set up a boundary. It's not too late to say no. And she said that really resonated with her because she'd been giving in to something in her relationship for so long that it's almost like, well, how could I change that now? This is the way it's been. These are like the roles that I've played. And it's not too late. And actually here's like a way that you can communicate and to try to start to shift that and change that and say what you want and put a boundary in. So I think that sometimes we just feel like maybe it's too late.
And sometimes, yeah, I mean, when people come to me, because I'm a divorce coach, they've already reached the point where, for the most part, now I've had a couple of couples say, or a couple of the women I work with say, like, okay, maybe we don't really need a divorce. Maybe we need to talk about some of these other things. But when you're in a relationship, sometimes stepping up and saying, let's talk about how this workload is distributed, or let's talk about whether it's a work relationship, maybe it's with your boss. Hey, I really don't like I really, really feel uncomfortable with the way that this is being delegated. Can we talk about it? Sometimes the other person has been trying to break out of something that they're in, and it's just getting the conversation started that really starts making that change.
Yeah. And even in some things, maybe like in a relationship, like, well, I don't know, that's just kind of what you always done. I didn't know you even had a problem with it because you never talked about it. It's always just been what you do, And I was like, oh, well, that doesn't have to be my job or my role or the thing that I do anymore. Yeah. And you're right. And it just opens up like, oh, and maybe the other person will have no problem with it.
Yeah. So what is one strategy? And I know we can't get into boundary setting as a huge thing. And I mean, people work on it and work on it. Where do people start? Like, let's say I know that there's something that I really want to change in my life. Whether it's whether it's with your kids, your spouse, your boss, it doesn't have to be in a relationship thing. What are some of the strategies, or how do you even go about deciding if you need a boundary or not?
I would say it really starts with building self-awareness and and looking at what you value today. I feel like as we, as we grow and as we change and as we get older, our values shift and change. And sometimes we don't actually like tap into that and do a little exercise to be like, oh, what do I actually really value right now? Or who am I today and what's important to me? And I think becoming self-aware of that, and if you kind of define that and then look at your life and be like, oh, am I actually living to my values? Are the things I'm doing, is that actually aligned with it, or or what's important to me right now? You can ask yourself, well, maybe what do I want? And you can see if just being self-aware with it and being like, oh, like, I don't know why I do that. That doesn't align with what I want or my values. And to not do it in a judgmental way, just be very curious about it, right? Just be like, oh, it's interesting. What kind of experience am I trying to make here by doing that thing? And then from there, you kind of start to shift and change it and do it. And I really encourage people to do it in a gentle, soft way, because sometimes we're like, oh, like, I shouldn't do that, or I shouldn't do this, and we just beat ourselves up and self-criticism and all, like, no. Just be curious with it and then see if it's something that you want to shift or not.
Yeah. And it's funny because values is such a big topic now. And I was talking on a previous podcast, and I was saying, I talk to people about values all the time. And it's so interesting how people say, well, I want things to align with my values. And then you go, well, what are your values? And they're like, well, loyalty, friendship, and it's hard to identify your values if you don't actually do the work and sit down and think, what is it that's important to me?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And a lot of us don't even think to spend the time to do that unless you hire a coach and they actually are like, we're doing values exercise today.
Yeah.
And here's like a list of them for you to even start thinking off of. Yeah.
Yeah, because I think I have one that I got from somebody else, and I think there's like 54 values listed, and people look at it and go like, holy, I didn't even realize all these things were values, like hard work, dedication, honesty. Those are the ones that come to, those are the come. And then when you're not in alignment with the values, everything feels off when you're doing it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes, and that's so interesting because like sometimes your life can feel a bit off, but you don't know why. And then that can be the defining moment. Like, oh, this goes against my values. And like, I've noticed that with myself, or like if something triggers you or something, kind of irks you, or you have some hesitancy or something, what is that? And it's usually something maybe it could be fear-based, or it could be something that's like something's off with your values. And that can be where you can have sort of like a conversation about that, to be like,
yeah, or if you I always find this interesting, and I really started paying attention to this probably about 15 years ago. When I have a really negative response to somebody, like, because I'm super fast. Like, I look at a person, that's it. They're either good or bad. I mean, it's just like there's and I started thinking, why do I do that? Because I don't even know that person. Like, I know there is scientific reasons why we perceive some people as friendly and some people, I know all that stuff. But what is the judgment? Like, you see the person pull into the grocery store in the fully decked out SUV or Hummer or something, you automatically have a judgment about that person, right? Then you see somebody pull up in like a Subaru hybrid, and you're like, oh, that's an environmentally friendly person over there. So it's like, how do we get those judgment pieces in our head for ourselves and for others?
Yeah, it's so interesting. And I feel, some of that is like societal norms and like things we're kind of told, or maybe there was an experience we had in the past. And I think we as humans, we often do that. I mean, it's basically the way our brains work, right? Where like something gets experienced and then we predict what the future is going to be like. So we like grab the past and we like throw it into the future, predicting what it's going to be like, and or using those same judgments and those same thought patterns, and that's when you can really, again, being self-aware of it. I mean, like, oh, well, do I actually, like, does that matter? Or do I actually care? Like, or, someone actually does drive up in whatever vehicle, you know, like you can even train yourself to be like, I'm going to be open. It's almost like that beginner's mindset, right? And just being like, yeah, how can I shift my brain from not doing that? Because, you know, and because you never know what's going on in anybody's life.
Yeah.
And, you know, so like for us to just like put these judgments on people, yeah, it's very interesting as to where that comes from and why it's such kind of like hold on you that you actually think those thoughts.
Well, and I find it and oh, I'm going to get off track here. Let me stow that thought for another day. Because we'll go way off track if I go down that rabbit hole. So when people come to you, like, what is it that they come to you with? Like, do they say, I'm feeling stuck in my life, or what do you hear from clients that are looking for your services?
That they're exhausted. They're getting burnt out and they are giving so much to everything and everyone, whether it be their job, their home, their family, friends, that they're completely depleted and need to figure out how to prioritize themselves really, or how to give themselves, or what to do with the exhaustion, if you will. And it's not about, you know, drinking more water or eating a carrot or something. I teach them more about, you know, to be okay with, to put yourself first and to be okay with that, and to be okay with being like, you know, like I only have so much time and energy in a day, and I need to fill up my cup first, and actually what spills over can be for others. And I think a lot of people don't think to do that, right? It's like give, and then they have nothing left for themselves. And if you do that so much, you know, if you're giving from like an empty cup or from a depleted state, you're not giving the best of yourself. You know, I know me, when I am like depleted, I am grumpy. Like I don't even want to be around myself sometimes. You know, so it's like, I'm not being my best person right now. And you are your best person if you can fill yourself up and give yourself time and energy for you to do what you want to do in your life, and like give yourself that self-love and self-care. And then from there, you're in a great place to give to others, and you will have energy and love and, you know, to give to others. So, yeah, that's
Yeah,
kind of what I help them.
I think a powerful thing I read somewhere was, no, I can't is a full sentence. You don't have to, you know, and
Even just no, that's
you,
a full sentence.
you don't have to explain why. And that's what I hear all the time is, particularly with women, but sometimes with men too. It's like, no, and I'm really sorry. And I'm Canadian, so I say sorry all the time, and I just say it. But no, you know, or they can't say no, so they go, well, I'd really like to, but I'm super busy on that day. And when you say that, then guess what? That leaves the other person. Well, what day aren't you busy on? And then you're
Right.
stuck, right? Because you got to give them an answer, and then you're going to end up doing it anyhow. So just learning to just
Right.
sit in that discomfort, and they're going to stare at you, and you just smile and glance back.
Yeah. And just like, no, I can't, you know, I'm sorry, I can't commit to that.
Yep.
Other thing as well is like, we can beat ourselves up so much, right? And like, there's this guilt that comes with saying no, or to like putting ourselves, especially if there's such people who are always giving, to make that shift of like, well, I can't because, you know, and there's so much like guilt and heaviness around it. And, what I love to tell people about like kind of overcoming guilt is like to become, again, really self-aware of it, right? And to like recognize when it's arising, and instead of seeing as a negative thing or beating yourself up about it, to consider that it's like a sign, like we were talking about, setting your boundaries, right? That maybe your boundaries or your priorities need a bit of an adjustment, and then get curious about it and figure out where the guilt is coming from. You know, is it society? Is it a past experience? Is it your own internal pressure? And then, you know, have self-compassion with yourself, right? Treat yourself with kindness and understanding, and like you would a friend, and acknowledge that it's okay to take care of yourself and you deserve it. So like, just take all that pressure off, and look at think of the positive outcomes that you could have by putting yourself first, right? And you can even visualize it. I feel like visualization can help with counteracting guilt, and you can like imagine that positive impact that it'll have on your life for you to, you know, do what you want to do, or put yourself first, or give yourself that self-care, and really like imagine it. And, you know, maybe you'll have increased energy, you'll have like improved mental health, you have a better work-life balance, you know, and really think these things, and like taking care of yourself, and visualize what that's like. And And it, yeah, like, what does it feel like? What are people saying around you? And really kind of like make that picture and to know, because from there, then you'll be like, actually, this is okay. I relieve myself of that guilt.
Yeah, and thank you for that tip because that's really, and that's a nice way to work through it. And I think also another thing is to start, you don't have to start saying no to your boss when he asks you to do like the year-end summary report or, do something extra that's really important for your work. Start with setting boundaries and saying no to little things. If it's uncomfortable, because you got to kind of practice and build up your muscles to be able to say it, more when bigger requests come through too. So
Yes.
we have covered a ton of stuff here today. I love the information that you shared. Thank you so much, Lisa. It's been really great. So what is one thing that you would like people to remember when they go off the podcast? What do you want them to think about and kind of keep in the front of their mind?
That it's okay to prioritize yourself and your commitments, and that you can be like polite and respectful in your response to that. Like we were saying, we're like saying no, and really like stand firm in your decision. And then, when you do it, acknowledge and celebrate the times when you have successfully prioritized yourself, really, because it's like it's time to embrace a life where we can all thrive, right? And achieve personal fulfillment and live life on our own terms.
Love that. Love that message. Oh, so positive. And if people want to reach out to you, find out more about what you do or work with you, what's the best way to get in touch?
Yeah, my company is called Inspiration by Elisa. So my website's inspirationbyelisa.com. And you can also find me on Instagram or Facebook at Inspiration by Elisa. And that's Elisa, Elisa.
And Elisa, thank you so much for being here on the podcast today. And thank you for your practical strategies, tips, and just your positive outlook. That's really terrific. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been awesome.